Hello everyone, welcome to Laboratory Tech 13 here from the Riptide Project Laboratory, and today we've got another great Magic the Gathering Arena stream for you. Today is actually going to be the start of a new series on our Arena stream every single Wednesday that we will be streaming. Will be Learnday Wednesday. That's right, Learnday Wednesday actually I think is what I put in the title, but yes, Learnday Wednesday is what we're going to be doing. Maybe I should make it Learnsday. I like it. It rolls off the tongue better. Learnday Wednesday. Do you learn something with me? Well, if you come to the stream and you're new to Magic the Gathering, if you're new to Arena in general, we're going to be going over all the cool things that will help you play Magic the Gathering better or play Arena better with all the other features that are going on in Arena. So our normal streams that we do, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, our Wednesday stream will be for new players into the game. So you can come over and watch us and learn some new things about Arena. Now, we're going to be starting today by going over the actual new player experience tutorial that they have in the game, and we'll explore some more concepts inside that tutorial, so that way it helps you understand what you'll be first seeing when you start Arena, and also some other things you might want to know while playing through the new player experience. So, if you don't know, if you're actually new to Arena and you've already gotten to the screen here where it has all this other cool stuff, so let me swap over and let's talk about that. So if you don't know, if you take a look here, and you're on this screen here, and you can see all the stuff that we've got here, and you don't know how to replay the tutorial, well, you can go ahead and go into the Adjust Options section. And then you'll see under that gear, Replay Tutorial. So we can click on that, it'll start the tutorial over, so we can, of course, check it out, go through it, check out all the cool things that are in the tutorial, and go over the basics of Magic the Gathering and Arena together. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? We'll click on that, it'll start it over. It'll start it over with the tutorial Sparky, I believe is what they call it. We can go ahead and get rid of Tracker right now because we don't necessarily need it. And if I left click here, I'll actually turn it back on. So let's go ahead and get rid of Tracker for just a moment here. I can actually just hide it myself. Go into the editor. Tracker, we don't need you at the moment. You can go away. So, here is a look at our early alpha new player experience. This is something that is currently on the game. And if you want to get into Magic the Gathering, if you want to get into Arena, this is, of course, one of the best ways to do it. But of course, here at the Riptide Project Laboratory, we like to do our research. We like to help other people learn how to play the game. And that, of course, also continues on with even the new player experience. We're also going to go through it together, so that way you can learn with us how to play Magic the Gathering and how to play Arena together. Now, let's go ahead and click on this here. It'll actually show off a whole board state.
Whoa.
And
if it isn't another beginner smashing my trees.
These elves aren't kidding around. You have to do something. You'll need to draw mana from lands to cast your spells.
so I like to wait for the voiceover to show up first, so that way we don't talk over it. And basically, we're going to explain how Arena works just from this point forward. We're going to explain things explicitly, the things you click on, the things you touch. You may not be new to card games digitally at all, and that's what the Learnday Wednesday stream is going to help you with. The Learnday Wednesday stream is going to help you with all the other basics about Arena, all the other things that you are going to know for Arena, or that you would like to know for Magic the Gathering in general. So if we're going to go ahead and start with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the board state currently. So what we refer to colloquially, what other players also refer to colloquially, is the board state. And the board state is what you've got currently on the board. So you can see we have a board state right here with all these different cool lines and things like that. That is called the board. And what is in your opponent's hand, you can see up at the top there, that way, up at the top there, that is 3 cards in their hand. You also have 3 cards in your hand right there, you can see, and these are hands. Now, what you also have on the board, technically, is libraries, and that is what is referred to as the rest of the cards in your deck. So you have a library, your opponent has a library, and you have a library. I'm actually right behind my own library, which is right here. You can see the library right there. Yep, that's the library right here. You have a library. It's pretty cool. You've got more cards in there. And every single time you take a turn, you'll draw a card from your library. Now, for the new player experience, they've only given us 3 cards each because it's a very focused experience. They're trying to make it so that you are introduced to concepts very easily, kind of easing you into how things work, how mana works, how lands work, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and continue on with the new player experience. You can see right here, they've got over on the right there, play a land. So playing a land is, of course, taking a land from your hand, which in this case, we'll use our mouse here. Our handy mouse will be taking that land, pulling it out over the board, and then letting go of the mouse,
Good.
which drops the land on the board.
You don't have enough lands to cast your spells yet, so that's all you can do right now.
Now,
There
the
is a
game
penalty
doesn't
for
do...
trespassing in Llanowar.
The game doesn't do
Play another land, so you can summon a creature.
The game doesn't do an explanation of the phases, which is, if you played any other card games before, or even if you're new to card games, there are phases, and phases are, you can only do a certain thing during each phase, or a certain thing happens by the game rules each phase. Now, if you want to take a look here, outside of the tutorial experience here, we have 5 represented phases on the screen. You can see them up here at the top with the opponent. You can also see it at the bottom, but we're being covered over by Sparky here. And the phases in the game include the Untapped Step, which includes the Untapped Upkeep and Draw Step, where you draw your 1 card a turn. Then you have what is called the first main phase. And the first main phase is your first time you can do anything in the game. So you can play spells, you can activate abilities, which we'll go over later, and you can do mostly everything that you can, which includes playing lands, but not combat. Combat, where you're attacking with your creatures, happens in the next phase, actually called the combat phase. So the combat phase, or combat step, which is in use interchangeably, has beginning of combat, declare attackers, declare blockers, combat damage, and end of combat. It's a whole big deal. We'll go over that when we get to it. We'll go over it, of course, when the new player experience that we're currently in also goes over it. So then after that, you have, after your combat step, you have a second main, where you're able to cast more things. Maybe something happened in combat that gave you some extra mana to cast stuff in your second main phase, or maybe something else happened later, or maybe you just don't want to cast anything until after you attacked first to see if your opponent has any responses to your attack. So you'll go to your second main, you'll play your stuff, and then you'll finish through that, which Arena is very smart. It will actually figure out if you are done with your second main, and it'll pass it over to the cleanup step, which we like to also refer to as the end step. Now, the end step has the cleanup step inside it. It's a whole thing together. And basically what happens is there are a lot of permanents that say, at end of turn, do this, or at end of turn, remove this, or until end of turn, this effect is active. And this is where those effects go away. When we get into combat, we'll talk about damage, and this is also where if you have too many cards in your hand, because the game only can allow you to have 7 cards unless modified by the game rules through another card, you'll have to discard down to 7. That's the cleanup step. So, what have we got here? Now that I've explained the phases, what is actually going on in the current new player experience? What are we trying to do in the new player experience to learn the game? Well, we've already played a land, which was we dragged it over the board state and we dropped it. But now we're on to playing another land on our next turn, because our opponent had a turn. On their main phase, they also dropped a land, which was a forest here, you can see. And if you don't know, the basic land types in the game typically are a plains, an island, a swamp, a mountain, and a forest. Those create the 5 colors of mana, which you can see on the backs of Magic the Gathering cards here. The 5 colors of mana are on the back, so you know right away this is what you're going to be playing with when you play the game. So, what are we playing? We're playing a deck that requires white mana to cast its cards. And if you look at your opponent, seeing that they have an elf avatar and they have a forest out, they are playing a deck that requires forests and green mana to play the spells that they need to play. So you can see on our lands in Arena, and specifically in Arena. Now you can also see this on lands in paper, but we're talking specifically about Arena. You can see our land Plains here has a little indicator of a white mana symbol on it, and we also have the full art of the card here that shows the white mana symbol in the text box, which lets you know this land produces white mana. Now, if you want to be a little bit more advanced with this, if you always see a land that has a subtype of a specific type, like for example plains or forest or what have you, you can make the assumption that that card is going to make that mana. So if you see a card that says land with a subtype of plains and forest, maybe you can assume somewhere on that card you'll be able to tap that land for a green or a white mana. It's just a little bit of an extra advanced tip for people that are kind of savvy out there with looking at land types on cards. Now, we're going to go ahead with the new player experience here, and we're going to play a plains like it wants us to. So you can see over there on the left there it says play another land. So we're going to play the land, and we'll go from there.
You can summon creatures from across the multiverse to fight for you.
So if you look right here, it's showing us that we can use one generic mana, that's the one symbol next to the white mana, and we can use a white mana from any of our planes, and since we have 2 planes, we can easily cast this creature, because we have one to fulfill the generic and one to fulfill the white mana, to cast this Shrine Keeper. So, when they explain that you can cast creatures from around the multiverse to fight you, it is explained that you, as the player in the game, and I, and everyone else we play against in the game, are Planeswalkers. And Planeswalkers are people that are wizards that can create and cast spells, and they can pull different types of spells from different worlds that are out there to put together a constructed or competitive deck from the things that they're playing with. And it's a very fantastical concept that has drawn a lot of people into the game, myself included. Now, we're going to cast this Shrine Keeper. That is a creature that has Human Cleric as its type. You can see it on there on the card. That's not relevant right now, but it might be later in future deck building, which we'll go over at a later date. And we're going to go ahead and cast that because that's what they want us to do, right? They want us to put this creature out on the board, okay? Or in the battlefield is what they like to refer to it. Specifically, the battlefield. So let's go ahead and put this creature on the battlefield. I'll refer to it as the battlefield from here on out. We'll refer to board state later when we're talking about more advanced theories of the game. So, to cast this, you can either do it one of 2 ways in Arena. You can either drag the card and drop it, much like doing it in other digital games where it'll use the resource necessary to cast it for you, or you can do it deliberately yourself. Now, in this new player experience, we might not be able to do that. So if I click the lands, look, yeah, it's not letting us do that. But that's a future advanced technique that you can do later. But for right now, we're just going to hover it over just like before, and we're going to drop it on the battlefield.
Not another step.
wait for the new player experience to finish so we can continue our explanations. So, if you look at your opponent's setup here, they have 2 lands out. You've got 2 lands out. We're going to continue playing lands because it is a good idea to continue playing lands every turn that you can play lands. There is no real reason to hold back lands except for an advanced technique, which we will talk about later. This is not for advanced techniques today. We are doing basic techniques, which is continue to play the lands as you draw them. Now, for different types of decks, if they're not playing a single color like we are here with white, there may be a different way that you'll want to play your lands every turn so you can get the most out of them. And that is also another advanced concept that we'll go over later at a later date, a later Learnday Wednesday, all right? So let's go ahead and play our land for turn, just like they want us to. Now, what they explained before our turn started was that our creature here has 2 and 2 on the bottom right, which is 2 power. You can see the little sword icon next to the 2, and 2 toughness. And toughness is how much damage the creature can take before it dies, before it is sent to the graveyard by dying. And the graveyard is the place where all of your cards that you discard from your hand, creatures and spells that are cast, creatures that die go to the graveyard go there. Spells that are cast almost always go to the graveyard unless specified otherwise. Other permanents that are on the battlefield, permanents being other things that are cast that stay on the battlefield, that are removed from the battlefield, typically go to the graveyard, that are destroyed. And for here, with our Shrine Keeper, we know that we can attack for 2 damage, but we can also block 2 damage into that toughness, which will be very useful later on if the opponent has bigger creatures that we need to block with. So I want to take a quick second here to talk to B-Dog, who is in our YouTube chat. Welcome, B-Dog. We are doing Learnday Wednesday, which is our Magic the Gathering stream where we're going to go over core concepts of Magic the Gathering and also core concepts of Arena, so that way new players can get into Arena through that. And we'll be doing that for the first, I think, hour or so of our stream, and then we'll go on to regular streaming from there. So that way people can get into Arena a little bit more with an explanation. So if you haven't watched, if you're coming in a little bit in the middle of this, you can, of course, go back to my VODs. I'll pull it out so you can watch that first Learnday Wednesday, and you can also follow along. And I really hope that you enjoy my explanations of how things work in Arena and how things work in Magic the Gathering in general. And if you're confused or if you have any questions, let me know in the Twitch chat. Let me know on YouTube. This will also be on YouTube as well, in the comments below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing, or if you like explanations about how Magic the Gathering works in Arena, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe here on Twitch or on YouTube to help us help you make yourself better at Magic the Gathering, okay? So, let's go ahead and continue on here. What were we explaining about? We were explaining about power and toughness. And now that we've explained how that works, we're going to press the advantage here. Our opponent, you can see, does not actually have any creatures to block with this turn, which is something you do in combat to stop damage from getting to your life total. Now, your life total that you have, we have about 7, I believe, underneath this Shrine Keeper here, and our opponent has 8. So we're going to be able to do 2 damage to our opponent and put them down to 6, and the goal, of course, is to get them to 0. Now let's go ahead and play this Shrine Keeper here in our first main phase. Now, another thing they also explained too before we got onto our main phase was that the Untapped Step happens. And the Untapped Step means if we attack with a creature, it has to tap to attack. So it has to turn sideways. Let's do it this way. Turn sideways to attack. And you'll see that once we go into combat, after we play the Shrine Keeper. So let's go ahead and play the Shrine Keeper, which will put us into our combat phase, our combat step, because we have nothing else to do. We have no other cards in our hand. So of course, like before, we'll hold it over the battlefield, we'll release, and it'll cast the spell and put it on the battlefield.
You're going to have to fight your way out of here.
So, the explanation they give was that creatures with summoning sickness. Now, this is something that Wizards of the Coast themselves have been trying to figure out a good way to communicate this to players. It's a concept that still feels a little bit strange to new players, so let me explain it thusly. Whenever you cast any sort of creature at all, a creature, it's the only type that has this problem with it. It will not be able to attack the turn it comes out unless it has a special keyword on it. It's a card, it's a word you find on the card called Haste. And Haste allows that creature to attack the turn it enters the battlefield and also use any abilities it might have when it enters the battlefield. So, normally creatures cannot attack the first time you play them. You have to wait one turn to let them get over their sickness of where they're coming from, whatever plane you're pulling them from, whatever world you're summoning them from, so to let them have the ability to attack your opponent, okay? So, for example, we have a Shrine Keeper that we cast last turn. So now we can attack with it this turn. We have a Shrine Keeper that we just summoned this turn. We can't attack with it this turn because it has Summoning Sickness, so it'll have to be next turn. Then we can attack with both our creatures, which will do even more damage than before and get us faster to kill our opponents, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to attack with our Shrine Keeper. Now, there is two different ways you can do this. Arena is going to let us do it the first way, which is clicking on each creature individually. We'll put it into an attack mode. You'll declare it as an attacker. So this is the terminology you're looking for on cards that say cards are declared attackers that have other triggers and things like that do that. But that's an advanced concept we'll go over later. So there's another thing we can do too in Arena. Specifically, we can click on the All Attack button, which means every creature that we have that has the capability to attack, we make them go and attack. There's also the No Attackers button. So if we don't feel like we can attack through some of our creatures that our opponents have to block our creatures, we click the No Attackers button. Or if we want to not do our combat step, we click on that. And then we can go into our second main phase and we can cast spells, we can cast creatures, we can do the things we want to, just so that we can make sure to have our strategy go correctly, okay? So, what have we got going on here? So, can we click the All Attack button? I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't look like it's lit up, but let's find out. Yes, we can. So, the cool thing is you can actually see the arrows go to the opponent that we're going to attack. So, if we clicked on the Shrine Keeper again, we would actually remove him as a list of attackers. So we click that, it goes away. The damage it looks like the opponent was going to take has also gone away. But if we click it again, you'll see the arrow go to the opponent, and then you'll see the fact that we are doing an attack on our opponent, Kylea. And we're going to do 2 damage to them unless they have some way to stop us, which fortunately it looks like they don't. So now that we've clicked on that, you can see the All Attackers button over here has switched over to 1 attacker. So if you click on that, it'll send to the client. It'll tell Arena that I only want to attack with just this one creature and this creature alone. So remember what I said before about creatures having to tap to attack? Well, you're about to see that happen. Boom! We attacked the opponent and our creature tapped. So, what does tapping mean when we have creatures attack? Oh. So, here you can see our opponent played a Treetop Warden, a 2/2 for 2 mana, just like our Shrine Keeper, which is a 2/2 for 2 mana, 1 and a green. That is a creature they can block with. But specifically, when we attack with our creatures, it makes them unable to block. Creatures have to be untapped to block creatures the opponent attacks with themselves. So you'll want to always think about in the future, should I attack with this creature? Should I block with this creature later? Should I not attack so I can have it back to block with, so that way the opponent can't get by to my life total? It's something you have to think about when you're playing Magic the Gathering. You'll want to always think about whether or not you'll need to attack or not. So that's a good skill to evaluate is, can you attack or not with the things I have on the board and get to their life total? And or will I attack into a creature that will also kill that creature? Or can I block their creature next turn with 2 creatures that allow me to keep my creatures and kill their creatures so I get more of an advantage on the board? There are a lot of things you have to go over to set that up to make it better for you, for your board state or your battlefield. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into combat here. We don't necessarily need to attack with or cast the Loxodon Linebreaker. We can do that later. So let's click on combat and see if we can attack in combat.
Keep attacking.
Yes, we can. So Sparky here said, keep attacking. And I think we want to attack with all of our creatures, right? We want to win this game, right? So they have 6 life. If we attack with both of our creatures, if they don't block, they'll take 4 damage, right? 2 and 2. But let's assume they block. Okay, they block one of our creatures with their own 2/2. That means our creature will deal 2 damage to their Treetop Warden, and then our Treetop Warden will deal 2 damage to our Shrine Keeper. They'll kill each other. They'll go to the graveyard. And then we'll deal 2 damage to them with our Shrine Keeper. That's something that we're expecting to happen. So let's see if that happens, shall we? We'll click on the All Attack button. And then we'll click, yes, we want 2 attackers to attack Kylea. So you can see here, our opponent has decided to block with the Treetop Warden. And you can see right on here, the power and the toughness is dealt damage to each other, and they will kill each other in combat. Very good. I love this design here. This is a very good explanation of showing the 2 damage going from one card to the other card, because combat damage typically all happens at the same time. So we'll click on that. They blocked each other. They kill each other.
Admirable. Pity I have to crush you.
And our Shrine Keeper did 2 damage to Kylea. So now Kylea is sitting at 4. So now that we're in our second main phase, the ability to cast spells here is open to us again. And I think we want to put a little bit more of a stronger card on the battlefield. We've got this Loxodon Linebreaker, a 3/2 creature for 2 generic and 1 white mana. So this is really easy to cast, of course, because all we have to do is drop it on the battlefield like before. We have 2 generic mana, it's 2 white mana we're feeding into that, and we have 1 white mana to satisfy the entire cost of 3. Fantastic! Now we've got a great attacker and potentially a great blocker.
Whoa, that beast is huge.
So if you look here, we have the Rumbling Baloth. The Rumbling Baloth is a 4/4 creature. That's just a little bit too big, isn't it? We can't potentially attack past their creature because our creatures are only 2 toughness, and they're only 2 or 3 power. Now, the opponent can only block 1 creature with 1 creature unless specified otherwise. So, likely if we were to attack with our 2/2 and our 3/2, our opponent would block our 3/2. Being the bigger power creature, they would want to make sure that that creature is removed off the battlefield so they don't have to deal with it later. And also, they can block without having to worry about that creature killing their own creature in combat, having that 4 toughness. So we're just going to go ahead, because we only drew a plains this turn, and playing our plains this turn. Now,
Watch out. If you attack now, your creatures will get pummeled.
Now, if you see here, the Sparky helper has let us know that if we attack with our creatures, they're probably going to die. And that's no good at all, right? We would rather block with our creatures next turn if they attack with the Baloth, which will kill both of our creatures because the Baloth will have 4 damage to spread around to 2 toughness on the Shrine Keeper and 2 toughness on the Loxodon Linebreaker. However, we will be able to effectively remove that creature from the battlefield by doing so, and stopping them from attacking us in general. Now, another thing they could do is they could attack and not have another creature to back them up, which means that we could do an advanced maneuver of not blocking that creature, taking the 4 damage, putting us to 3 life, and then seeing if they have a creature to attack back and then attack them for 5, which would win us the game. Now, let's see if that actually happens. So let's go ahead and do no attackers. We're not going to attack here. We'll let them take their turn.
Fighting spirit, but now I will show you true strength.
Ooh. Now you can see here, they're not giving us the choice to not block their creature. They just cast a spell,
Don't worry.
allowing their
One of your
creature
creatures can block it.
to become +4/+4, which adds an additional 4 power and 4 toughness to their creature. Feral Roar is 1 and a green for a sorcery. Now, if you don't know what a sorcery card type is, it's a card that can only be played in your main phase on your turn. So it can be played in your first main phase or your second main phase. They've decided to play it in their first main phase because they want to attack with an 8/8 creature. That means we have to block this turn because otherwise we'll be taking 7 and we'll lose the game. And we don't want to lose the game, do we? So let's go ahead and go through and block with Shrine Keeper here. Considering that it's the least power creature we have on the board, it's better to keep higher power creatures on the board to have A, a better chance at blocking your opponent's creatures, B, a better chance at dealing damage to your opponent's life total, and C, just because it's just a better creature. That's how we do it. So let's go ahead and click on Shrine Keeper. It selects it as a blocker. And we can select and move the arrow to a thing we want to block with. So of course we're going to block the Rumbling Baloth, who you can see has a blue outline on that card, letting us know that we can block that creature. Now, there are other creatures later in the game that will have abilities on them that will allow you to not either block it, or you'll require more creatures to block it. And we'll go over the concepts of keywords and things like that in our future Learnday Wednesday streams. Now, we'll go over this here, and we'll go ahead and click on Rumbling Baloth to block it. That's the one we want to make sure that we don't take 8 damage. We'll go ahead and let Arena know this is the thing we want to block with here by clicking on one blocker button down on the bottom right. We'll see the Rumbling Baloth come in and crash and kill the Shrine Keeper, but we still have a Loxodon Linebreaker back at the beginning.
Looks like you have a trick up your sleeve.
So, something interesting here that we just drew is a Sorcery Spell. That's right, I just told you about a Sorcery Spell earlier, and we also drew our own Sorcery Spell. So, what spell did we draw here? Well, it's Take Vengeance. So if I right-click on this, it should bring it up onto the screen. Take Vengeance is 1 and a white for a sorcery cast during either of our main phases, the first or second, and it's destroy target tapped creature. Now remember, I said creatures have to tap to attack. So our opponent has done a fatal flaw, which is, of course, attacked with their creature and left themselves open for us to draw Take Vengeance here and use it on their creature. So Take Vengeance will destroy that tapped creature, and it'll allow us to attack with our Loxodon Linebreaker without any fear of repercussion and get them down to 1 life. So let's go ahead and cast that Take Vengeance on the Rumbling Baloth. So we kill that creature. Now, sometimes in the game itself will automatically know exactly which creature you're talking about. And Rumbling Baloth is the one that we're going to select here for sure, because it's the only tapped creature on the battlefield. So we'll go ahead and click on that. It'll know that we're trying to kill it. It'll kill it.
You're not making this
It'll go
easy.
to the graveyard. And our opponent is getting a little bit mad that we're killing their creatures. And then we'll go into combat phase, which you can see by our avatar has lit up for combat. We'll click on Loxodon Linebreaker, we'll attack the opponent with our 1 attacker, and they'll go down to 1, just like we said before. Wow.
We've got you cornered.
They really don't want us to attack again.
Clear the way.
They don't want us to get through and win the game. So what are we going to do? we're going to win the game, of course. How are we going to win the game? Well, Arena has supplied us with yet another card, which is fantastic for this new player experience, which is a sorcery, again, 2 and a white for a card called Blinding Radiance. Tap all creatures your opponents control with toughness 2 or less. So any creature they have that has 2 toughness, which you can see on their side, they have 2 Treetop Wardens, which are 2/2/2s. We're going to tap that creature and allow our Loxodon Linebreaker to come in and win us the game. Now it taps opponent's creatures, so our Linebreaker is free to attack, so that way they can get through to deal that damage. So you'll want to cast certain spells at certain times, and this is definitely a card you want to cast before you enter combat, because it has no value to tap their creatures after combat unless you're doing some interesting advanced combinations. Now we'll go ahead and cast this, of course, just like doing any other card in Arena. We'll hold it over the battlefield, and it'll use the mana that we need necessary to cast the spell. 2 generic and 1 white. So as explained before, tapped creatures can't block. So that means that we are free to attack with our Loxodon Linebreaker. So let's go ahead and click on it. It puts it as an attacker. We're going to attack them to try to take their 1 life away. Let's click on 1 attacker to confirm it.
You did well.
And we've got them
Perhaps
below
we'll meet
0
again.
life. That wins us the game. Fantastic. So that's our first opponent down. Our next opponent is a goblin opponent, you can see here, but that'll be it for our Learnday Wednesday little intro to Magic the Gathering and Arena. We'll go over the next part of the new player experience in our next part of our Learnday Wednesday stream next week, next Wednesday, all right? So thank you, of course, for checking out the early part of Learnday Wednesday. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Let me know, of course, in Twitch chat as well if you're watching this on Twitch chat. And I'm going to go ahead and put an end intro here so that way I can cap this off for YouTube. And of course, remember, as always, the research never ends.